Hi, I'm Gary and welcome to my shop. In this video, I'm going to show you this welding outfit that I bought as I plan to do some welding art crafts and show you what I've got, what my past experiences was, and how this works out good for me. I got a lot of this stuff at Harbor Freight. Obviously, they're cheaper for some of the basic goods that you need, such as the helmet, welding blanket, bib apron for welding gloves, and the hammer. Now I got the gloves for like $5, the hammer for $6, the welding apron for, what was that again? $11, and the welding blanket was on sale for like $22, and it's normally about $28. The welding helmet, I got that standard price, $44, and then I also got a 2-year warranty on it. 1-year warranty was like 1 year for $10, 2 years for $15. So I went with the 2-year since it makes more sense economically. And given that Chicago Electric, I don't know exactly how good that stuff is. I hate to say bad things about Harbor Freight because some things are good, some things are not. You gotta kind of know what you're getting. So I figured a warranty on this welding helmet will be a good backup plan for that. Covers me for a couple of years. So also, I bought this Lundgren 140 welder. It's a MIG welder. And previously, in past years, I used to do some welding when I was a general contractor, and we did some handyman work. We do some like railing repairs, repairs to small things like maybe even some lawnmower decks and stuff like that, and also kind of created some things myself too. I enjoyed that. Back then, I think I started out with a 90 amp welder from Sears, and it really just didn't do the job very well at all. And then I graduated to a Lundgren 120 about a decade ago, and that was a great improvement over the previous Sears one. And the 120 there gave me the ability to use shielding gases such as argon, and you can use shielding gases for doing aluminum welding and stainless steel. So it's a good option to be able to do that. I bought the 140. There's a smaller one, I think it's maybe an 85 that they have. These are at Home Depot and Lowe's. You can buy them at your local welding supplier, but you're going to probably pay a few $100s more there. You kind of make some special package deals here for Home Depot and Lowe's. Now there is a difference between what you get when you shop Home Depot or Lowe's. With the Lowe's one, I found that to be a little bit better. It's about $50 more, but it also gave me the gas gauges for controlling shielding gas tanks. So I thought that was a good advantage. I think there's a few other extra perks in there, but nothing really that all significant other than the welding gauges. I wanted that. I wanted good quality gauges rather than buying some cheap stuff at like Harbor Freight. So you want to be able to depend on it. So the 140 is, I can use shielding gases. With the smaller one, like the 85, you can't use shielding gases. You have to use flux wire. And the 140 you use the flux wire, and you can use the shielding gas. The 140 is as far as you can go, as high as you can go, and still be on a 120 volt circuit. Actually, it requires a 20 amp circuit, so I had a 20 amp circuit installed in my shop here so I could run this, and also for my planer, because my planer kept tripping circuit breakers on the 15 amp, although it was rated for 15 amp. So I had a 20 amp circuit installed. It gives me 125 volts and 20 amps, and really serves me well. And if you go another step higher to like the Lundgren 180, that requires 240 volts, and going up from there, you got to have 240 volts. So installing a 240 volt circuit would have been probably much more expensive than putting in that 125 20 amp circuit. So like the Lundgren, and I'll do kind of like an unboxing here. I've never done an unboxing before. Go through and take these things out, see what I've got, how it comes, and then we'll probably get into some other videos further after that and doing some welding projects. I'm going to have to do some practice and get back up to speed myself because it's been about 10 years since I've done any welding. So, but I should be able to pick up pretty quickly and easily compared to a new beginner. Practice makes perfect. Also, another thing with this 140 here is it comes with a DVD, instructional DVD that you can watch on your computer or in your Blu-ray player or DVD player at home. So I'll move on here and start taking this, getting this all unpackaged and see what we have. Okay, now I'm going to go through all these parts and stuff that I got from Harbor Freight and the welding helmet. And something I want to mention here is that I'm not a welding expert. I'm a novice, just like many of you. Many of you are probably more skilled than I am. So a lot of great videos here on YouTube that you can peruse. A lot of techniques out there for beginners to the advanced and specialized techniques for different types of welding and so forth. So I recommend that you search that out and review those too. All I'm going to do is give you some basics and some of the tips and tricks and techniques that I've learned over my years. But like I said, I'm far from an expert. I'm a novice. So, to start out here, the stuff I've got from Harbor Freight. First thing I've got is the chipping hammer for chipping away any slag from your weld. If you get a lot of slag in your weld, then you probably need to revisit that and learn how to make a more fuller or filled in weld seam. If you're not getting a good solid weld seam, then you're going to have a lot of voids in there and so forth. That's going to weaken the weld a lot. So you want to make sure you got a good weld in there. This removes the slag that you can kind of pound out of it. Maybe if it's not too bad, you can kind of re-go over it again with the weld again to fill in any voids. See how that works. The next thing, of course, is the welding gloves, and these are to protect your hands, from all the high voltage electricity, heat, sparks, and all that stuff, and just really protect you. Now, these are heavy-duty leather gloves. They might have some other kinds of leather gloves out there if you pay more money that are more flexible and easier to use to fit more like a glove instead of this handy heavy mitt-like type of thing. Thing is just learning how to use the trigger finger here for pulling the trigger on the welder. So we'll see how that works. Next I've got is this leather welding apron, and what I did with this, I might have to change my mic around here a little bit. This comes kind of out of the bag with a couple of straps. Oh, here it is, tucked up there. That you would normally, put around behind you and tie these together like you would a shoestring or something. But, I'm not very good at that, and so I put like a split key ring on here and tied it onto the strap, and then one of these latches that like you use for the leash of your dog. So I stick it around the back of me, and I can just hook it up. Holds my apron in place for me. So that's one way of doing it. There's probably a lot of different ways. You might also be able to spin this around while it's on your body and tie it and then spin it back around the other way, so you don't have to do this maybe. Okay, get this off, get my mic back in place. Next up is the welding blanket here, and this one that I got and picked up as a special is 6 by 8 foot. It's very heavy. It's really heavy. It's a fiberglass welding blanket, so it's flame retardant, all that, and will protect you. You can create a curtain to protect the area in which you're working from sparks and so forth. So you won't get sparks into things. It could damage other things for you or cause a fire. Don't have any flammable liquids or anything else around. I know how the sparks can go because I had a watch before. It's like one of those G-Shock watch, you know. They're like 120 bucks for the watch. And I forgot to take it off when I was welding some years ago. So I wound up with a whole bunch of little marks in the watch itself that would just melted the plastic and the glass. So you learn you got to take off things so you don't get them damaged, and cover up things around the area so you can protect that too. So great deal. Next is this welding helmet. Got it Harbor Freight. And let's see, it comes with instructions, the helmet itself, and looks like an extra plate or protective cover from the face of the helmet. Take the helmet out. Such as that. It's got a headband in the inside here so you can adjust it to fit your head. And also there's knobs on the sides here. Adjust the tension, so flipping up and down, you can adjust the tension for that so it doesn't fall down on your face all the time. Also, there's a knob on this side here that goes from a grind mode, which means the lens stays pretty much clear. If you're going to do grinding or something like that, or some cleanup work on your weld, then you can dial it up here and go to whichever degree of darkness that you want. It goes all the way from 9 all the way up to 13. It's pretty good. Now I know myself, a lot of people might use this at around 10 or 11. Myself, I'm probably going to be going up more towards 12 because my eyes are more sensitive to light than most people. That's because of some of the medications that I take. Tends to, I think, dilate my pupils. So I like that feature. I bought this specifically to have that grind feature on there, so I can go from welding to grinding, not have to change things out a lot. So that'll help a lot. Now, as far as this welder, getting this out of the box, I think the shipping weight on this thing must be about 80 pounds. It's really, really heavy. It was hard for me to lift it up on top of here. So what I'm going to do is, I won't be able to heist this thing out and set it on the table because I'm just not tall enough to get up there like a crane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this down on the floor, then I'll start taking the pieces out one at a time onto the table here and show you how that fits up. Okay, I have got this out of the box, all the parts and components set up on the table here, so I can kind of show them to you. This is the main unit that does all the welding. This is the hose and gun that feeds the wire out. And this is the ground wire that will ground out and make the circuit for welding. Now, this comes with a tip on here. I think it's a plastic tip. I think it's temporary just for shipping protection of these parts. There is a nozzle in here that you use, and use the appropriate size tips in there also, depending on the fire or the wire size that you're going to use. And it's got a number of extra tips in here for the two different sizes. Now this comes with a couple of spools of wire. One's a Super Arc L56, and this is one that you will need a shielding gas to use this with. And usually it's an argon, 75% and 25% CO2 as a shielding gas mix. And I'll show you that set up a little bit later. Also, it comes with a spool of inner shield, and this is a flux cord wire. And these two spools are different in size. This one's like a 35 thousandths. The other one is a 25 thousandths. Now with the inner shield one, flux cord, of course you don't need shielding gas to do welding with that. But it's good for maybe thinner materials, and also sometimes, depending on how you use it, you can get more spatter out of this than you do with using a shielding gas on a regular steel wire. So anyways, came with all these, some instructions, do recommend that you read through these instructions, because there's a lot of little tidbits and settings that you may miss if you don't read this. And they're going to be important to you having success in your welding. Well, in this clip, I'm going to make a few changes to the clip I did before. And that's in regards to the welding gloves that I have and the welding apron that I had. I picked up these welding gloves at Harbor Freight for 10 bucks instead of the other ones, which were 5 bucks, but they were very heavy, like cow leather or whatever. Very hard to have any dexterity to them, whereas these give me a lot of dexterity, and I can pull the trigger more easily, so, and control that better. Now these are a thinner leather, of course, but when you're doing MIG welding versus stick welding, you're getting a lot less sparks and intensity, so you don't really need as much protection, and this gives you a lot more dexterity, of course. Also, I got these MIG pliers. They're great for changing tips and nozzles and cutting wire lengths off the end of your tip. And I also took back that heavy apron and bought this jacket instead as flame retardant. So like I said, since I'm not doing stick welding, just MIG welding, I'm not going to have as many sparks and intensity and heat, so this works a lot better. It's got a pocket on the inside. It goes down deep here. I'm not sure what good that's going to be, especially when you got this buttoned up to your neck. So, and this was only maybe 8 bucks more than the other apron was. Okay. Next, what I'm going to do is to get into showing you how to put this together. Now this welder, as it comes out of the box, it's set up to do mild steel welding and using flux cord wire, which is good for thinner metals. It can also weld up to 3/16 of an inch and thicker if you use multiple passes. So you can do thicker stuff or other kinds of materials such as aluminum and stainless steel with using different kinds of gases. Use usually an argon gas with a 25% mix of CO2 for mild steel welding for most of that. For stainless steel and aluminum, there's some other gas type mixes that we use for that too. So I'll talk about that later. What I'll do is kind of get this set up. I'll get the cameras around so I can give you a good view of what I'm doing. There'll be some cut-ins and cut-outs, so please bear with me as I try to get the cameras into positions and give you a good view of what I'm doing. All right, I've got this welder sitting on a Lazy Susan here, so I can kind of turn this around and show you things as I go through installing some of the components on this. One of the first things I'm going to do is to open this cover by lifting this up and then pulling it up and exposing the insides. Now one of the first things that we're going to see in here is that it's got this chart here, and this gives you different sizes of metals that you're welding, and then reference that, and you can reference in these columns here what the wire speed is and what the temperature or the heat setting would be. Now the wire speed is this knob here, so you'd turn that up to increase your wire speed. And this one here changes the temperature or the amount of amps that you're going to be welding with. So also it's got this chart on here that gives different metal thicknesses, and what you can do is to kind of hold up a piece of metal that you're working on and check out what the thickness of it is. This one happens to be a 3/16. This may not work very easily depending on the object that you're trying to measure the thickness of. And this is only if you don't already know the thickness of the material that you're working with. A lot of these will come with a label on them that gives the thickness on it. So, but if you want to double check, you can use this, or if the piece is too big and bulky, you can also use one of these gauges or tools that has the various gauges slots on there so you can measure them. Also has like a handy 3-inch ruler on here. And you can measure the thickness of your material. See, that's 1/4 inch is too big, 3/16 is just right. 10 gauge, whatever, is too small. So I can see on here, this is a true 3/16 based on how this measures up for me. So that's what these charts here will tell you. And this is basically for welding mild steel. If you're going to be welding any aluminum or stainless steel, these charts are going to be different, and you're going to be using a different kind of gas, and you'll have to find out charts that will be applicable to the type of metal that you're welding. So next we're going to go on here. Here is where the wire spool goes on at. It comes with an adapter here in case you want to put on a larger spool here. Now these come with about a 10.5 ounce spools with super arc and also the flux core wires. That's a little over 1/2 pound, 10.6 ounces. That's just a sample spool that it comes with for you. And what you want to do is go out and buy some more spools right away, because normal spools on these are about 2 pounds. And if you're going to do a lot of welding, like I anticipate on doing myself, I picked up a 12-pound spool. So I'll be using this adapter here to mount this 12-pound spool in here, because I don't want to be running out of wire in the middle of a job. And you do use quite a bit of wire faster than you think. Another part here to this is the wire feeder. And this has a couple features to it. It's got a tension spool here. This clips down and that pops up to release, and you can get the wire to feed through. This also unscrews here, and then you can take this out, and this is on a keyed shaft, so you have to be careful when you put this on, get the key lined up correctly. Now on one side of this, like this one, is 0.035, the other side is a 0.025. So you want to match that up to the type or thickness of the wire that you're using, so you have the correct groove on this wheel and you get the correct kind of feed. I'm going to be setting up here myself for regular welding without the flux cord wire, so I'm going to be using a bigger slot there. Another thing is, when you flip this back down here and you adjust this knob to adjust the tension on the wire feed, you usually start out about a number 3. If the wire slips at all, then you're going to want to tighten this up a little bit, and I'd say maybe go about 1/8 of a quarter of a turn at a time, test and see if it's feeding correctly, because you don't want to bind the wire too tightly. Also, when you feed, you want to make sure that your spool on here is tensioned correctly so that it doesn't unspool itself. It should be able to stop when the wire being pulled through stops. Your spool should stop too and not start unwinding itself. If it does, you need to tighten up the tension on this knob here. This is something, once you get these things set up, it's pretty much going to stay that way, and periodically you may need to test it just to make sure you've still got everything adjusted correctly. I would say test it maybe between every so many jobs, 5 or 10 jobs. Or if you're going to do a big project, test out your setup to make sure you're on there correctly. Another thing too is this is wired for, out of the box, it's wired for doing the flux core wire welding, which means the positive line here is actually connected to the negative terminal, and the ground wire that clamps or grounds out your work is connected to a positive terminal. And that's to create an electrical flow in such a direction that it will effectively use the flux cord wire. Now with regular welding, with the shielding gas, you're going to want to reverse that. And that's what I'll be doing too, since I'm going to be doing welding with argon gas for a shielding gas. So I'll take this off here and I want to put it onto the positive terminal, and then I'll connect my ground wire to the negative terminal here. Another feature is there's a button up here, or a switch, that you flip back and forth, and what this is for is if you're using a spool gun. Usually you use a spool gun for doing aluminum welding, so you would switch it over for the spool gun. For all the other regular welding with a normal gun, we're going to be at the side for 100L, so it's a standard feed. Okay, so I'm going to start putting together some of the components here so you can see how this goes and how this all feeds in. See if I can get a closer view into here on this for you. All right, in this shot here, I'm going to install the gun into this part here where it feeds into. And what you have to do is to loosen up this wing screw here up enough so that it's up and the fitting can slide into there. So what I'm going to do is to fit this into here through this front slot around in this part here, and they'll slide up into there. To slide this in, you can notice that there's a couple of O-rings on here. Then we have this like a dado surface here, a flat surface here that's recessed, that this screw will go into to hold this all in place. Now I will push this into here and guide it in so it slips into the hole. And then all I should have to do is give it some gentle pressure so that it slips right into the position there. Then I can tighten down this wing screw so it's tight. So I've got this in here firmly, and this holds in good and snug, won't come out. Then I've got this little plug in the front here that will plug in to the this receptacle on the front of the welder here. Now what I'm going to do is to change my wiring here a little bit so I can be set up for doing the right kind of welding. So I took these screws off. I'll move this positive over onto the positive terminal. Put the wing nuts back on. Snug it down. Then I'm going to take the negative cable for the ground. This feeds through a hole on the lower end here, into here, and through this plastic loop here. Give yourself enough slack so you can reach this the terminal here. And you kind of loop it in here like this. Then we'll put the other wing nut on there. Now I'll be ready for doing the shielding gas type of welding. Next is going to be putting the wire spool on and show you how to set that up for this to feed through. Okay, now I'm going to put the wire spool on, and to start out here with, I'm going to put this like half-pound spool onto here, and just to show and demonstrate that before I get into the bigger spool. So I'll do some practice with this. So what I'll do is take this wing nut off, take this plastic piece off, slide the spool onto the spindle there, and this back on there, and this has a spline on it also, so you want to line that spline up when you put this on there. Put the wing nut back on. Give it snug, so it's fairly snug there. Now what I have to do is pull this wire out of here a bit. It's tucked through a hole there, like a fishing line or something. Pull this out a little bit. Then what I'm going to do is take my tool and snip this off. After you've snipped this off, we're going to feed this. Make sure you hold on to this so it doesn't come loose and it'll unravel off the spool there. So you want to make sure you keep a good grip on that. What we're going to do is feed it in through this little thing here. Going to want to release this so we can get the wire in and through there a bit. And then once it's through there, we'll put this down and put that up to hold the wire in place so it won't unspool on us. So, get this backed up here and start feeding it through. Make sure we keep a good grip on our wire so it doesn't get loose on us. Of course, another thing to remember is you got to change this roller here to 25 thousandths because that's the thickness of this wire that I'm putting on here. Okay, it's coming through. Now I'm going to need to do is get this wire to feed into this other end here. Might be hard to follow me as I do this. See if I can get a view. There we go. So, got that feeding into there. Now I can put this down, put that on. That'll hold my wire there so it won't unravel on me. So, got that fed in there. Next thing I'm going to do is to straighten out my welding hose here a little bit. Get my welding hose so it's kind of fairly straightened out. No kinks or anything like that. And what I'll do is I'm going to plug this in. Then I'll hold this and feed it till the wire comes all the way out the tip here. And I want to make sure I've got the right size tip on this too. So I'll use this tool here to loosen up the tip. So I can take that off. Double check the size of the tip that I've got on here. It's really hard to see. Sometimes you may need a magnifying glass. Or take it out. So I can take this somewhere and look at it. Okay, the tip that was in there was a 35 thousandths, so here I've got a 25 thousandths I'm going to put in so this feeds correctly. And let's give that a little bit of a twist to tighten it. Put the nozzle back on. A little bit of a twist to tighten that. Don't have to muscle down on these real hard. So now I'll get this plugged in and we'll get the wire feeding through. Okay, I've got my voltage turned down to minimum. I'm going to turn this on and got the wire speed at about 6 or 7. See how fast that goes. Now I'm going to stop just to make sure that this is tight enough so that it doesn't unravel. I'll keep feeding this through. Okay, got it so it fed all the way through. Now what I'm going to do is turn this off. Then I can trim the length of this. Probably could have trimmed the length of it while it was running, but I'd just soon not do that. So that trims it to the correct length that it needs when you're starting your welding. Because you don't want this to be too short. You need some out there to be able to make your initial contact with, and then it'll feed and start welding. So that's how mounting the wire goes. Getting that all set up. Everything went pretty well. Now I'll use this for doing my practice and so forth, and then when I get done with that, use up the rest of this on some small projects. Then I'll put that 12-pound reel on here. All right, so the final step in this process of putting this together is connecting up the shielding gas. Now, if you're going to use flux cord wire for your welding, this is a step you can pass on, and just go to the end of this video where I'll have some important information that you don't want to miss. So be sure to see the end of the video. Anyways, this welder from Lowe's came with the regulator valves for the argon tank. It gives you the pressure that's inside the tank. Then also this knob here, you can dial up the amount of pressure that you want going out to the welder, which is usually about 35 to 40 pounds. Inch pounds or foot pounds, I can't remember which exactly, but to about a 35-40. And you got this hose that came with it. You connect that to the valve assembly here, and then this connects into this port on the back of the welder here. And these are all brass fittings, so they don't require any special sealants or anything like that. And of course, once we get everything set up here, I'll tuck things away here to make it safe. So that's pretty much it. Everything's connected here. I'm ready to do some welding. That'll be probably some more videos in the future. I'll do some practicing here. And then for my camera, I have to get a special shield for my camera to be able to record any welding operations. So that's it. Well, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and you got some inspiration to maybe pick up on doing some kind of welding in your shop. As I said before, I'm a beginner myself. I'm a novice, but I've done some welding in the past before, so I got a little bit of a leg up. So thought I would just want to share some of my tips and tricks with you, how to get this welder set up and so forth. And for further videos on welding instructions, I'd recommend that you watch some of the others here on YouTube. There's a lot of excellent videos here for beginners and to the advanced, and also some specialty techniques on welding. So if you like this video, please give me a like and share it with your family, friends, and fellow craftspersons. And please subscribe so you won't miss anything. Also, please comment. I'd love to hear what you want to see. So, if the ladies don't find you handsome, at least they should find you handy. Thank you.